Okay, final speaker of the day, Kara Swisher. She's the host of On with Kara Swisher and co-host of the Pivot podcast. She's a former host of the Sway and Recode Decode podcast and the co-founder of the technology website Recode. She is the editor-at-large of New York Magazine and a regular contributor to NBC, CNBC, and MSNBC. Considered the top reporter in the tech game, Kara has been reporting on the industry since the early 90s. She is often considered one of the most influential journalists and one of the most feared.
If journalists were influential, but okay.
And so I thought I would say, why would you be the most feared?
I'm not. I think that's nonsense. It's, because I'm slightly tough on men. That to me is the only thing. I'm sort of like vaguely tough. I actually was having this conversation today. I did a really good interview with Trey Stevens, who's terrific. He's at Anduril. So I was talking about innovative defense, because they're doing all these sensor towers, they're doing drones, and of course, because of the Chinese weather balloon, it's fantastic to talk about these issues right now. And he came and talked to me. Now, he's got a big investment from Peter Thiel. Palmer Luckey is there. And when I wrote him, I said, will you come on the thing? And Peter and Palmer don't like me, I've been tough on them. And so he agreed to, and we were talking about it, and he said, well, they think you're mean. And I was like, literally, Peter Thiel just called Warren Buffett a sociopathic grandfather, and he's mad at me for saying, perhaps sometimes selling Bitcoin while touting it as a problem, that's mean. And I was sort of like, okay. But in any case, he came on. It was a great interview, and it's coming out Monday.
He wasn't one of the ones you called a baby?
Oh, I called Palmer a baby. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. But he was a baby. It was a baby. I think I just sort of say what a lot. I say what. That's what I do. And I think that's fearful to people, or I say I don't understand that, or that seems wrong. And I think the culture in Silicon Valley, when it started, I'm just writing a memoir right now of the many years I covered all these people, and I'm in the Steve Jobs chapter, and he was one of the few people that you could argue with, and he wouldn't be personally offended, right? It was just professional. And I was recalling a scene where he debuted something. I think it was 2010, maybe. It's right before he died, near his death. And it was called Ping. Anybody remember Ping, the social network for Apple? Yeah, it lasted that long as it took to Ping. And social networks were not within their area of expertise, let's just say. They did a lot of things, but social networks was not one of them. And so he debuted it, and at the end they had Chris Martin come out and sing La Vida, whatever. And so he comes back to the demo area, Steve always did, and he comes over to me, because I know social networks, I've been covering Facebook and everything else, and he goes, what did you think? I said, I think that sucks, and it was made worse by having to listen to Chris Martin sing. I hate Coldplay. And he started defending Chris Martin because they were friends. I was like, there's nothing you can do to convince me Coldplay is good. But I said that the social network's terrible, and here's why. And I went through it. Instead of being defensive, he was like, that's a really good point. And they killed it right away. They killed it pretty quickly, not because of what I said, but what he did was he followed rather than led, and mostly Apple leads for the most part. And so he knew in his heart that it was wrong, and he wasn't offended that I pointed out the very obvious. Yeah. And I think sometimes when these leaders get to a certain size and shape, and they've got enablers around them, it's a disease. It's not the money as much as it is the enablers who violently agree with them all the time. Yeah. And when you say, I don't agree with you, they think they're to be feared. And I find that ridiculous.
Well, that's a good segue, talking about Steve Jobs, because I know you did a famous interview with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. And so one of the questions I had is, who are the most interesting people today in the scene? If you were going to redo that
yeah, it'd be hard.
Who would they be?
Because the most interesting person is dead. Steve, by hands down, was the most interesting person to talk to, because he combined creativity with, he wasn't a technologist per se, but he certainly understood directions. And when I was going over a lot of the interviews we did, he talked about podcasts very early on. He talked about post-PC. He talked about privacy 10, 15, 20 years ago. It was really, when you start to look, you're like, oh, He understood it before. And so it's really hard to think of anybody right now who, there's bits and pieces of people, like Tim Cook, great operator. He's 10x the value. Come on, there's nobody who's created more value than Tim Cook. Even Steve Jobs is a legend, but he's a business legend, like what they've done, and continue to take the iPhone to new places, creating AirPods, AirPod Maxes, continuing to create big businesses, shifting towards software and services. So a business person, sure, he's really interesting, but still not the same, right? Not like Gates and Jobs were sort of, like Edison and Ford, talking to them. And there aren't that many of those. You look at pieces of Jeff Bezos, who did an astonishing thing around commerce, has sort of lost interest, and he's super interested in working out a lot, it looks like. He looks great. He looks great, let's be honest. It looks good. I don't know what he's doing. I have some idea, but he looks, I don't mind, I don't judge. He's brilliant, and I keep wondering if he's going to do something besides things that please him. Like, he's so brilliant in the way he creates logistics and systems. And he's, he wants to have the good life, it looks like. That's what he's doing, you can see from Instagram. And which is fine, again, it's fine, but he has capabilities, bigger capabilities. And then you look, as we talked about Elon, it's just a traffic accident is what's happening now. It is, I'm sorry. Like, this is what I say. Now, he's not talking, we talked a lot and frequently. I had a great interview with him 2 years ago, I guess, on stage, and talked to him since. And he got mad at a tweet of mine and has now declared war on me. It's craziness. It's lunacy. And so, here's someone with amazing capabilities. I mean, you have to look at Tesla, brilliant, pushing it through. He wasn't the inventor of Tesla, but it doesn't matter. Steve Case wasn't the inventor of AOL, it doesn't matter. But he certainly pushed it forward and created this manufacturing system. Just, nobody can catch them but they can. They will catch them. They can't catch them today, they will catch them in 3 years. And so right now they've got the advantage, and that's brilliant, you have to give them credit. The rocket stuff, amazing. Starlink, amazing. But then each of these things, because of this Twitter lunacy, it's all going to be, he's moving to Howard Hughes status. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, that's what's happening. And so this was a man, as you know, that 100%, 90% of him was really interesting to talk to. And then there was that 10% crazy that was always sort of wandering around the edges that you'd see every now and then. You get kind of a mad middle of the night. Are you having is there other things you're doing that may cause this email coming my way? And then that's taken over almost completely. Yeah. And well, I don't know
I will say we do have, as an investor in our firm, one of the actual founders of Tesla.
Oh, well, great. Hello, actual. I know you're there.
Are you here, Mark?
Yeah. Actual Tesla founders get a lot of credit.
Anyway,
it's important.
All right, but you're going to do an interview with two people you have to choose.
Well, not.
And it can't be Elon.
Well, it can't be, because he's insane right now. It'd be impossible. He just yell at me for call me an asshole. He sent me an email. You're an asshole. I'm like, what? Like as if that's good. Oh no, you called me an asshole. God, what am I going to do now? It was so ridiculous. They're so petty and thin-skinned. And I didn't even do anything in that case. Sometimes I deserve. And you're an asshole.
Two people.
Yeah, I have a whole chapter in my book called I, asshole. But right now, that's a good question. I don't think there is a match like that. I can't think of, that's impacting things so significantly. There's people I like Tim Cook, I like Satya Nadella. That would be kind of an interesting interview.
That would be a good one. Yeah.
Really great operators, but that would be about being great operators.
That's right.
I think Satya's a gentleman and really has done a lot with that. Boy, has he taken that company, again, raised it in value, focused it on stuff. So I think I would do Tim and Satya, but it wouldn't be the same, but.
That'd be fun, though.
Yeah.
So speaking about people, and I wanted to spend a little bit of this time just talking about people.
Actually, Elon and a psychiatrist, but go ahead, sorry.
He shouldn't have sent you that email in the middle of the night. I got that.
I went like this. Oh, the end of my book. Thank you so much.
Let's talk a little bit about founder friendly. We had a little bit of chats, and there's this whole thing in Silicon Valley around.
Sure, there is.
Founder friendly. What do you think about that? Is that a good thing, a bad thing?
I think it's a good thing a little bit, but mostly not. Most founders are terrible CEOs, terrible, and don't have the capabilities that require to be a good CEO. And most good founders know that. They understand that and put people in place, either as COO and they get the role or whatever, or they remove themselves. Larry and Sergey removed themselves. They have control over that company when Eric came in, and that was the right move. That was the right move. Pierre Omidyar moved at eBay, and whatever happened to eBay was very strong for the while that it was. And Meg Whitman came in, a professional CEO. Some founders are good CEOs. Bill Gates would be one. Mark Zuckerberg would be one. Jeff Bezos. But they're the exception.
So this is generally known. I mean, obviously, I agree with you about this. It's generally known. So why, given that is relatively known, why do investors want to be founder friendly? What's it about?
Because they're the most insecure people on the face of the earth, and so they have to get in a deal, and so they'll give these children whatever they want. Yes, please have some more sugar. Like, yes, that won't give you diabetes. That won't give the rest of us. And so they literally want to, in any way they can get into a deal. There's so much FOMO going on. I mean, you're aware of that. Like, if we don't get into this, what? You're going to have $10 million less than you had yesterday, whatever. They facilitate. It does start at the venture capital level, like where they facilitate and allow these people to have this supreme decision-making capability. It does protect from people coming in initially at the beginning, I would say, probably, but in general, it's a monarchy. Like, you can't say to Mark, excuse me, this metaverse thing seems problematic. $10 billion is certainly a lot of money. It possibly could be spent elsewhere. It was anybody saying, except for me outside, yelling outside of Facebook, are you fucking kidding me? But no, you don't have anybody questioning them. You don't.
So
Steve Jobs did not have control of Apple.
Right.
Like, if he doesn't get control, the rest of them don't deserve it. And you cannot fire them. You can't fire their kids. You can't fire their kids. Think about that. I don't love, News Corp's the same thing. Why is Lachlan Murdoch the CEO of anything? Because he was born. Great. Good for you. Well done.
One of the things about Kara is she has no opinions.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, think about it. Like, really? That's why you're getting the job? That's why you're getting the job.
So as long as you're ripping on that, you want to rip on the 20-to-1 voting shares that these executives get? We talked a little bit about Nick Woodman at GoPro and Mark Zuckerberg.
Yes, I think if you cannot be fired, there's a problem. There's all sort of machinating boards and stuff, but in general, being able to be fired is a very good governor on your behavior. And I don't think it makes you more bold. It doesn't. It makes you more arrogant in almost every case.
So how do board members stay on these? I was on one. I was on the GoPro board, and I left because we couldn't make any decisions.
Trip him? I don't know. What are you going to do? Nothing. There's nothing to do.
But you can't represent the shareholders,
It's really
horrible.
You cannot. You don't, what do you even, Facebook, where was the thing? I was like, why are you even there? And so many people have left that quietly and not saying why, but afterwards, they're immediately on the phone saying, well, I had no influence. They said, you're fucking kidding me. Wow. What clue did you have when you joined the board that you didn't have any clue? So, I don't know. I just find it ridiculous.
A related.
But you're not, you VCs aren't, well, you're not, I don't call you VCs, but you're never going to stop it. You're never going to stop it. It's because you want to be in those deals, and those people have a need for control. And it's literally like giving children, it's what is Firestarter, that little girl, you had to keep giving her food or she'd blow you up. That's the kind of thing you're
We try not to do that at Slush, I'll say. A related thing. So what are the characteristics in today's world that you see that you like in entrepreneurs? And what's different about the way entrepreneurs are today than they were 10
I like the entrepreneurs today. I'm hoping they don't get bad. I think they're more cognizant of a lot of things, including their impact of what they make. I think they really are. They are cognizant and a little slower, right? A little bit slower in developing. They're not in a mad rush for share or anything like that. So I find many of the younger ones I meet, especially around climate change tech, health tech, some of the EV stuff, it's hard, right? It costs a lot of money, like that kind of stuff. And so I find them to be more thoughtful, a little bit more cognizant of where it's going, like the impact. I think that's one of the things you saw problematically at some of these other companies where they just didn't think. They just ran right into the breach and filled some need and didn't think of the impact. I think they're much more mission-driven in a weird way. I think I'm spending a lot of time with EV people and climate change tech people, and I find them they're solving real problems. A lot of times There were a lot, I used to say Silicon Valley was a lot of smart people working on stupid things. Like, every time I get there's one that just closed in San Francisco that was a tech company, I don't know how, it was called Laundry, and it was a place where you washed your clothes. But there was technology in it, sure, a washing machine has technology, but you used your iPhone to do it. I couldn't even, I was like, I need to leave here now because you're not a technology firm. But I think a lot of that kind of silliness is gone, a little bit of it, and the silliness of the fundings, that it seems a little more serious-minded to me.
Well,
whatever it is, whatever it happens.
Well, that's
to be.
great.
Food.
I mean, I hope that that's true because
Yeah.
we're a lot of venture
Food.
investors in the crowd that we want there to be.
Yeah, this AI
solid
stuff
citizens.
is serious. There better be some thinking,
Yeah.
a little thinking around
So
it.
another related subject to that is the Silicon Valley thing, right? We have people from all over the world in here, but the venture industry is really founded here, and over the years there's been Silicon Alley, and there's been
Yeah, they've tried.
all these different places. Right now, everybody's talking about Florida and Texas, and everybody's moving to these places,
Whatever.
stuff like that. I don't see it. So what
Has
do you?
nothing to do with taxes. No, it's because of the new innovation center. Are you kidding? These people, if they could grab one more dirty dollar, they do it. They're moving there because they have no taxes. That's
But
why.
doesn't it seem like
Sorry
Silicon
to tell
Valley is
you.
still the center of the universe for this kind of investing?
Or
Or do you think it's being-
it should spread out. By the way, it should
Agreed.
spread out, and it should go. There should be more centers of talent. This is something Steve Case has talked about in both of his very prescient books. Actually, he was the person who really pushed AOL out at the time. But there's talent everywhere, and so you have to be. One of the things is a lot of venture capitalists never wanted to leave. They liked lunch here. I mean, famously, Mark Andreessen wouldn't go anywhere but Hobies. Like that was where he liked to eat. Now he lives. I don't know where he lives. Where is he, in Vegas or wherever he's moved? But I think it's okay the ability to be remote is okay. But still, the big companies are still here, right? Meta's still here. Google's still here. Netflix is still here. They're all the big important.
Are there any other geographies that you see kind of getting
I always
the
go visit
gravitas
them.
we have?
Austin's been through it and then away from it.
Yeah.
And, when they all we're moving to Texas, I'm like, well, the weather's so lovely in the summer, that'll be enjoyable. And, and the first thing they had the weather thing with Governor, whatever his name is, not providing heating oil, that was nice. Everybody has their issues. In Florida, all us Bitcoin people are going down. Well, that worked out really well. And how's the seawall going? Because it's coming. You know what I mean? I'm like, anywhere you go is going to be a problem. I think it's very hard to create what's been created here.
Yeah.
Israel, obviously, Tel Aviv is really exciting.
Right.
Ukraine certainly was very promising.
That's sad.
And you look, I was just in London, there's exactly one company that's really interesting, and there is. I'm sorry, I looked. I spent a whole week
Do you have a
looking.
point of view about India? We had a whole session on India today, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of...
Yeah, there's some places. I just don't. I think there's a lot of talent. You should let companies create. There's places. That's fine, and travel yourselves. I don't think it matters where you are necessarily. I think the idea of creating Silicon Alley, or there was one where I think it was Ro Khanna and the congressman from Kentucky wanted me to come down. It was Silicon Holler, which I thought was insulting I was like, what is this, the Beverly Hillbillies? This is what why use a term like that? It's not a positive term. Like you're a bunch of yokels or something. And I was like, nobody's coming to Kentucky to create the new chipset. That said, they weren't. I'm sorry, it wasn't happening. But if you put it with these new CHIPS Act and everything else, you could see if they put these manufacturing facilities in certain places in the U.S., could be really interesting. That's a lot of money for lots of stuff.
Yeah.
And that could be, and you need
help.
government. You need government to be part of. People always forget the government gave Tesla a loan, right? That's how Tesla survived initially. Now look, of course it's innovation and creating great things, but without it, it would have been, let's find 10, 20 more Teslas and do that, continue. So government, the ability of government's really stepped back from its role. In this case, this CHIPS Act will be interesting to see how it's rolled out. And if we get a lot more innovation brought back into this country, that's going to be major, I think.
Changing subjects, let's talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart personally, which is diversity.
Yes.
It's a big thing, and we're not really doing a great job of it. What I say about diversity in Silicon Valley is hiring somebody who's not Indian.
Yes. Yes, well done.
But there's virtually no women here.
No.
It's really difficult. So what do you say? What do we do about it?
You know what, I bang my head up against this issue. You make arguments about studies that show a more diverse workforce. First of all, you run up against the political buzzsaw, where they just have to go on and on about woke. Like, today on the way here, I was looking, Marjorie Taylor Greene was insulting Rihanna rocks, and so did the rest of the who sang the national anthem, and then Chris something or other was also singing it, and she said, I liked him, but nobody else. Like, why did it have to get woke? And literally everyone was like, this guy is the wokest country singer ever. He shouldn't even know because he's so stupid. But the politics that get into it is ridiculous. Like, it's become so stupid because it starts to say, there's study after study that shows diversity it makes better companies. It would make sense to have a more, in nature, diverseness creates better everything, like everything. And so, homogeneity is bad in most cases, biologically, mentally, everything else. And so what's happened is we've gotten into these little thought bubbles, and we think that's the place to be and that's strength. It's not strength at all. And so I don't know what to do about it, because I think where in the chain is the problem? Is it in 7th grade, where girls are meant suddenly, who are really good at math, suddenly get knocked off because of lots of sociological reasons? Is it in college, where there's more women graduating college now by a lot now? What happens there? What happens in the first job things? What happens to venture capital, right? Every step of the way, it's a problem. And I've been writing about it since the beginning, and I would just do things, as a journalist, I would do things like, I wrote one story called The Men and No Women of Facebook, right? And I just,
the men and
no women of Facebook. And so all I did was I put up their pictures, and just pointing it out, just making the point. It was white guy, Indian guy, Asian guy, white guy. Like, that was what it was. And they got mad at me. And I just wrote nice things. He seems nice. He looks like the guy above him, exactly like the guy above him. And they called me. They're like, that's mean. I'm like, what? It's your management structure. And then Cheryl came, and she represented 17 women, apparently. So, and then I did the Men and No Women of Web 2.0 boards. Which was that you think you could be diverse on, right? You certainly could. That's a really easy lift to get lots of diversity. I had Andrew Mason, who I love. He's a lovely guy. He's now doing a really cool video podcasty kind of thing. And he's like, can you help me find women for my boards? I'm like, no, I can't. Like, that's not my job, binders of women for you. It was so strange not to even think of making boards diverse, especially like like Twitter, for example. In the early days, it's like half and half women. There's people of color on that service. It was really, the statistics for Twitter are very diverse. You would think the board would be diverse. And they were, of course, Twitter's been a traffic accident for years and years. This is not a new, fresh thing for this company. It's always sort of been on the edge of some disaster. And so one time when Dick Costolo, who I have great regard for, very funny guy, when he was running Twitter, I looked at the board, and it was literally all the same man. Like, I don't know what to say. And it was doing terribly. It was doing so badly. And so I wrote this lead, because I was the editor of the website, and so therefore I approved my writer, which is me, lead, which was here on the board of Twitter, which has 3 Peters and a Dick. There are no women, there's no people of color. And so there were 3 people named Peter and a guy named Dick. So, and he was a comedy guy. I thought that was the best. I should have retired like the day after. So he calls me up and he's like, Kara, that's not very nice. And I was like, what? It's factually accurate. I don't know what to tell you. Is there something there you're noticing? He goes, that's a dick joke. And I'm like, yes, it was a dick joke. Like, you're a dick for not having more people in things. And so we went back and forth, and he said, what he did, which was interesting, I said, I don't know how you could have mathematically the same exact people, like that this is the best choice you can make given how badly your company's doing. And he said, and he didn't mean to say it like this, but he did, he said, we have standards. And I said, the only time you mention the word standards is when it comes to women and people of color. Only time. This group of people you have is a friggin' clown car driving into a gold mine, as Mark Zuckerberg called Twitter, right? You're doing so badly with these people, and this is the best you can do. Can't you just look at it and understand that there's either either white men are the smartest people on earth and there's nobody else, that could be a fact, or it's just horse shit. Like, it's just horse shit. And so that's the problem, is you don't get a chance to see what could happen at any of these places, because they're successful on their face of it, but how much more successful could they be? That's the problem. So I don't know what to do. You have to build it from the beginning? I don't know. I honestly don't. I have 3 sons and a daughter, and she's 3, and I have to say, I think about it a lot. Like, when is the day that she's going to be a lesson? When is that day going to happen? I don't know. Because my sons certainly love themselves.
It's clearly a problem we're all struggling with.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of more serious questions before we let you go. One is just the antitrust thing, which we haven't talked about today. We've got, Microsoft and Google and Amazon. These are real behemoths who can pretty much take over any industry if we let them. Do you have a point of, the government's making a bunch of noise and all that?
They're making more than noise.
But this is a real problem,
Making
and it
lawsuits.
doesn't. Well, they are.
Yeah.
So what's your point of view about it?
Well, I try to talk to people. I spent a lot of time with Amy Klobuchar, who had the antitrust bill that just lost. I promise you, Kara, this year I'm going to pass it. I'm like, I'll wait by the phone, Amy. Senator Klobuchar. They didn't pass that. The tech companies came in with $110 million of lobbying, and apparently Amy Klobuchar broke the internet. I didn't realize that, but she did. They pressured Congress people that were on her side, with attacks in the districts. So that's what happened to that, and it never passed. It was supposed to pass in the lame duck part, and so that's one thing. We've not had an overhaul of antitrust legislation in 100 years. Right. Things have changed, and we sort of are in that Borkian. There was a little change, which was corporations. Now we have some people, Alina Khan at the FTC and John Cantor, and I've just interviewed John very recently, like 2 weeks ago, and he was, you should listen to it. I think he has a point, is that innovation comes with competition. I think that's the argument the government's making, that these, whether it's Apple in the App Store, whether it's Google in search, I think the problem is catching up to them. Right now, search is changing with this ChatGPT, and advertising is changing. Amazon's coming in, but it's not Google and Facebook own online advertising, and the competitor is Amazon. Oh, okay. Like, it's not some company you've never heard of. And so I think they're correct to pursue this and pursue some sort of breakup of some things, but often they come in too late. And it has to happen on a congressional level. Right. Congress has to make changes, or else we're going to be governed by European laws, because they're moving quickly with the Digital Rights Act, or California laws, right? Fine, but you can't be governed by a state. You need to have a privacy bill, an antitrust bill, a transparency bill, and they should be easy to pass in this Congress. But this Congress is like, again, speaking of a clown
I've decided to avoid that subject.
Oh, they're just clown car. They literally just spend all their time yelling at each other, and they're not doing their jobs, governing. They love throwing bombs.
Well, these big companies it is an issue for the venture community, for entrepreneurs, that you have to find places that they won't go because they can just kind of take over everything.
They could, and they could move into cars or health or whatever.
All right, so let me ask you, we're kind of wrapping up the day today, and I think I previewed this with you a little bit. Walter Isaacson wrote this book called Codebreaker.
He did.
For those of you in the crowd, if you have not read this book, you should. Codebreaker is a really, really good book about CRISPR. And in the foreword, he said the following about technology trends. He said in the first half of the 20th century, technology was all about physics, the atom, Einstein and nuclear bombs and lasers and all that stuff. Second half of the 20th century was all about the bit.
Digital.
Right? Everything digital, the computer revolution we all obviously know. And he said now we're into the third phase of technology, which he viewed to be more powerful potentially than any other, which is the world of the gene. So, genetic editing, the whole biology, we had a convergence tech. Do you see that? And
100%.
I mean, it's pretty obvious, but what do you see out there and is this going to be bigger than the bit?
Well, yeah, it's because it's us. It's what are we? When do we sort of what do we use AI for? What do we use our brains for? How do we link in our lives and things like that? And I just interviewed Cindy Bertozzi, Dr. Bertozzi at Stanford here, who won the chemistry, and I've interviewed Jennifer Doudna, who behind CRISPR. And I'm spending a lot of time talking to this and it's a really interesting time in that area in terms of investment. And I'm not an expert in this by any means. But I think he's right. He's 100% right. This is, I would say, combined with AI, like machine learning and transportation and energy fuel. That's where we're going. It's a more life on Earth, right? Including space.
It's interesting view.
You know, I think it's more than how do we live on this planet? We are in a very there aren't other planets that we're going to. Like Mars, okay, sure. I don't really want to get stupider and shorter because I'm pretty short and I'm pretty smart, but I don't want to get stupider and shorter. So, we don't have a lot of alternatives. I just interviewed the person, one of the Blue Origin executives, and she's like, we got to fix this. And the reason we should go there is to fix this, because this is what we got. This is what we got, which is Earth. And so I really do think Walter's really interesting. Walter, for people who don't know, has spent the past year with Elon Musk, like all the time, which is going to be a great book. I'm interviewing him in a couple of weeks about how it's going. I think it's going to be a good book. He's been keeping notes for the past year and a half. So, but I think he's right. I think it's really important to think about that. And then again, what role does the government play in this? The government's played really important roles, positive roles, in space travel, in the internet, and this is one of them. Energy, humanity, like humans living on Earth. So how are we going to live on this planet?
So how do you see the government participating in this?
Right now, they're
area?
just shooting down air balloons. I'm like, stop it, please stop it. Like literally, did I pay for that F-15?
I mean,
how much do you think that cost to blow up that air balloon? I'm sorry, like $15 million to shoot down a weather balloon.
Do you think we should have the equivalent of the CHIPS Act?
What?
Do you think
yes, that was great. That was great. So we need more of this government, private government interaction together. I mean, we're in a situation like Ukraine is a much bigger thing than people realize. Like there's a war going on, a very significant war, but it's a new kind of war, which is the old war, which is bomb, bomb, bomb. And there's also all kinds of drone things happening. There's all kinds of cyber attacks. We have to really think about, this world is getting smaller and smaller as much as people don't want it to. Right. And so we have to really be thinking about, it's systemic. It's like, what is the systemic thing? And so the really smart investor is investing in healthcare, in cars, in batteries, energy, replacements for gas and oil, that kind of stuff. And space. I'm a big proponent of space travel. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving this Earth. But I am. I think it's really, the moon thing I think is really cool. And if I was a young investor, that's where I would absolutely be focusing my attention.
Well, that is a perfect segue to the last question I have for
Okay, all right.
If you could run any company today, which one would you choose?
Oh my God. I would run Disney and stop them from this madness of Frozen. I got this 3-year-old daughter with Frozen. It's like, I don't know what's happening with that.
How about a new company?
They have frozen cheese. They have frozen string cheese, just so you know. They branded it. I actually texted Bob Iger. I sent him a picture of the string cheese. I was like, you need to stop, because I had to buy, this was like $6 to buy string cheese with Anna and the other one on it, and Olaf and whatever. And he goes, we're making Frozen 3, sorry. I was like, fuck you. So Disney,
all right, you got to pick a venture. You have to pick a venture-style company, because this is the end of our venture
all right.
day.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I'd work in government. That's what I would do. But I think I would work on a climate change tech company. I'm about to take off in a hydrogen fusion plane with no gas, which I'm going to do in a couple of weeks. That's going to be great. Goodbye, nice knowing you. I think something like that. So the stuff they're doing around replacing gas and oil is hydrogen fusion. What's it called? It's called, it's not hydrogen fusion. Anyway, we showed them off. We had a whole day of code on this stuff. There was a cool food company called Oishi. They're growing raspberries strawberries right inside of a building. Delicious. They don't look quite like strawberries, but they're better than strawberries. That kind of stuff. One of those companies. There's another woman, an Israeli woman, who's working on pier technology that creates, they had these things out in the ocean, and of course the ocean's pretty strong, and so it would destroy their energy piers there. They were trying to get waves, and so they put them on existing piers, and they're trying to create that. She's a woman from Israel. Then there's this African-American man who's replacing all the furnaces in Newark with heat pumps. Like, that's the kind of thing. And by the way, diverse, really diverse. Same thing, cars are much more diverse than you realize. I think there's a lot more people operating robots. That stuff is really interesting. That's what I'd work on.
Kara Swisher.
All right, thank you.